I can see right now the benefits of reading about business, because then I naturally extrapolate it to my context and see how that fits in. Whereas if I'm reading about mental health, I'm seeing how what I'm reading fits into my context and creating more context around that, which is fun, but I think I've played enough of that game. And the book Emyth Revisited talks about a game worth playing, and I feel like making living a game worth playing, because for so many people it's not a game worth playing anymore, and people end their life because there's no meaning, seemingly no meaning. Yet we're immersed in meaning, but we can't see it. And we can't see it because it has nothing to do with ourselves and the meanings we've been given, and those meanings close in on us as meaningless, and then we're left with nothing. So part of it is a fluidity of meaning, because when we hold on to meanings, then we create beliefs, habits, patterns out of them. And we're naturally, as part of being human, we get adapted to those. So even if we see something as really meaningful and wonderful, eventually we need to move on. Well, what if we're able to move on every second? And that's part of flow. No time to create a habit or a pattern out of it, because we're creating, and creating isn't a habit or a pattern. So yeah, I think I'm going to officially get rid of mental health emails and tweets as a way to not have that put in front of me anymore, because I will be participating in a little bit in the next month or so, and that's probably enough. And I want to create a new game, a game of translating this context into business. And I'm seeing in this book, emyth Revisited, it's like it's talking to me. It's like it's full of special messages, though they don't feel special, because every moment of my life feels like it has meaning. So one special meaning doesn't really feel special, because right now I feel like in reading this book, I could be reading it and like, wow, this is special messages. It's talking to me. These messages are for me. But it doesn't feel like that at all. It just feels like I'm going to create something. This is cool. This will be fun. This will be a new game. When we first get in contact with the game of seeing meaning, reading between the lines, reading beyond the lines, seeing the implicit meaning underlying the explicit words and things, it feels really meaningful and special. But we've just been programmed out of being able to operate that way. And when we can again operate that way, it doesn't really feel emotionally wonderful. We're also programmed into thinking that life is about feeling emotionally wonderful. Emotion takes a lot of energy to create, and it's at the speed of chemical reactions. We need to be moving at the speed of light. Seeing something, seeing the meaning, before any emotions can even get created about it, we're on to the next flash of insight and meaning and moving in that. So we go from creating these materials in our body and moving according to that, and all the projections that creates, to moving at the speed of perception, moving at the speed of light. I get it. I'm laying here spooking and editing the video, and I said moving at the speed of light. If we're moving at the speed of light, we stay ahead of our projections, because projections are light, and if they're projected out, they're projected at the speed of light. So if we're moving at the speed of light, we're ahead of our projections. Perception is at the speed of light. And so is projection. So when we're actually perceiving and not looking at our own projections, we're moving at the speed of light, and hence ahead of our projections. Projection isn't possible. And then anything is possible, because we're not living according to our projections. Moo ha 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 ha. And if our brain cells are moved by the light of perceiving actuality, they're not moved to create projections of the past. And since they're moving and creating projections of the past, they're not perceiving actuality. And perception is action at the level of the brain cells. Because if we're not perceiving, the brain cells are projecting, and any supposed action that takes place based on a projection isn't really action at all. And I remember talking to myself quite a long time ago about how Dr. Peter Russell talks about the law of least action. And the law of least action must also apply at the level of the brain cells. So why has this law of least action been hijacked into least action being the brain cells projecting instead of the brain cells perceiving actuality? Why would that be? That's my new question. I'm thinking it has something to do with information overload. As the world has gotten more complex, the me structure evolved to edit out a lot of the information. I'm not sure. Before, when we were hunter-gatherers, it paid to be very perceptive of every single detail. But as information increased and abstraction increased, we created an abstraction of ourselves to deal with all this abstract information. But then, because of that, our brain is easily programmed into grooves of information in terms of what is important and what is not. And we don't really know what's meaningful and important anymore. And then it seems like map consciousness comes along to make us sensitive to all the information again, so we can discern what has meaning and what doesn't. But it feels eventually like information overload, because we are being overloaded with information. But by feeling it so strongly, we feel what's meaningful and we feel what's harmful and what's meaningless. And then after that process completes, we can reorganize our lives according to what we experientially, subjectively learned. It's a relearning process that re-educates us and de-educates us from what we need de-educating from. And if we aren't our magic self intentionally, creationally, then we play the role of mental patient accidentally. And I was thinking, really, I want to find a few good people who want to co-create this, a few resonant people, because from that, it'll make it easier for everyone else. I don't think I can help people directly. It's not my forte. I don't want to help. I want to create. And that naturally helps, whatever that means. I want to share this one quote from the book, The Emyth Revisited, because this is obviously a special message. The book follows the story of someone named Sarah with a pie shop. And the book writes, as she continued, it became so clear to me what a miraculous gift speaking can be. I saw that Sarah wasn't so much talking with me, but to herself, discovering as she spoke the miracles that lived within her experience, within her extraordinary imagination, discovering truths she never knew she knew, discovering all the wealth that was waiting there inside of her to be unearthed, to be explored, to be treasured as the words came tumbling forth. As though the words once freed by the speaking of them combine with the air to become something else again. A vision, understanding, expansion. That's what I've been doing with myself this whole time. So again, the theme continues where I'm doing something already, and then when I look in a book or something, it's confirming that. And the power of this now is it's confirming moving into business. And yeah, this is so interesting how he writes the observation of how when we speak, we figure things out for ourselves. So, and that's one of the main things, is speak and discover for oneself. Today I did really well at coherence breathing compared to yesterday. And I'll show you. And I also want to do a little bit of show and tell. I was flipping through this book that I have that I put some little inspirational things in it. It's just a white paper book, and so I tape things into it. Oddly enough, flipping through it, I remember these things used to feel really inspirational, but they feel a little bit elementary now. But I did find something that I want to share, which is something I drew in May 2009. So it shows me with this third eye really active, and an eye, so perception, seeing, insight, and knowledge in, and money in, and out is love and insight, and converting myself to being a sheep, a sheeple, to a bird. And this stands for being an artist of my life, and this is the path to freedom, and showing travel, I don't know what that is, flowers, balance, and being on my rollerblades with a laptop, so mobile, and an apple for raw food, and bird and the sun, of course, to be a snow chick, and going from left brain to right brain, and sidewalk chalk, and question marks for not knowing, and my heart there, of course. So I did that in May of 2009, and right on time, 2 years later, I went into map consciousness, and yeah, it seems like this is the sort of life that I lived out when I went to California. So it took me quite a few years to create. And I did create this in early 2011 when I went to California, and creating this and living this in 2011. When I came back home, I went crazy apparently and went to the psych ward. And then it took me 6 years to get back to this again. And then come back home and so far not go crazy and have transcended from the mental health paradigm. So I wanted to show this because it shows that what I'm talking about as living my life, I have considered for a long time. Now I would add in there a camper van, and yeah. And I'm probably going to go look at some used camper vans in the next couple of days. It seems like my consciousness took that drawing really literally, because after I went to California in early 2011 and I came back home, the night before I was hospitalized, I went into a holotropic breath state, breathing holotropically, and I experienced being a bird flying south. So I literally did transform into a bird, at least subjectively. Maybe objectively in some other dimension.